simplychurch.online, and we're excited to have you be a part of today's Christmas verse message. We started on December the 1st, and each day we're reading a couple verses from the Christmas story in Matthew and in Luke, a little bit from Isaiah and one verse from John. And each day we're just kind of reading a couple of those passages and pulling out some principles and practices that can encourage each of us in our journey with Jesus. So today I wanted to read a passage which continues a conversation that the angel Gabriel was having with Mary. And so it's found in Luke chapter 1, verses 36 through 37. Now, what previously had happened was the angel Gabriel spoke to Mary and said that she was going to conceive and give birth to a son, and that he was going to be named Jesus. And Mary is like, well, how can that be? I'm a virgin. And it goes on, and this is what the angel Gabriel says to Mary. This is out of Luke chapter 1, verses 36 through 37. He says, "What's more, your relative Elizabeth has become pregnant in her old age." Now, real quick, Elizabeth was Mary's aunt, and she had been barren her whole life. And so she is at a ripe old age. Most biblical historians believe probably somewhere in the 60, 70, maybe even 80 years old range, and she gets pregnant. So it says, "What's more, your relative Elizabeth has become pregnant in her old age. People used to say she was barren, but she has conceived a son and is now in her 6th month, for the word of God will never fail." There's a lot in this passage, and I think oftentimes this is one of those overlooked passages of Christmas, of the Christmas story. And there's a couple things, just a simple takeaway really today from this passage is, you know what this passage teaches us is we all have a choice to make in our life. Who are we going to live our life for, and whose approval are we going to seek? It said there in that passage that people used to say that she, Elizabeth, was barren. So what I wrote down is this, is that we can either live our life based on what other people think, or there's another option. But look, before we go to the second option, let's talk about that. Living our life based on what everybody else thinks. For decades, Elizabeth had seen her sisters, her friends, acquaintances get pregnant, have sons and have daughters, and she thought it would never happen to her, to the point of everybody in her life said to her, "You're just too old. You're barren. There's no way you're ever going to bear a child." And I think in our lives so often we live our lives based on what other people say about us, what other people think about us, which ultimately becomes what we say to ourselves and what we believe about ourselves. But I love this story. Angel Gabriel says, "Mary, you're going to conceive." Most biblical historians believe she was somewhere in a very young teenager age. And so the angel says, look, not only are you, a teenager who is a virgin, going to conceive, but your very old aunt has already conceived, and she is 6 months pregnant. What an incredible work that God had performed in Mary's family's life. So what do? We can either choose to live our lives based on what other people think and believe about us, or we can choose to live our lives based on what God says about us, what God believes about us. Here in her ripe old age, this barren woman that everybody said could never have a kid, through the power of the Lord, she became pregnant. Her dreams came true. You know what? I think for a lot of us, we need to be reminded today, God's not finished with you. He's not done working incredible things in and through your life. I don't care if you're in your 70s and you're barren, or you're 7 years old and you got your whole life ahead of you. I want you to be reminded today, God has great things in store for you. Now, again, doesn't mean we're not going to go through difficulties, because it had been a long time of disappointment for Elizabeth. But God came through. God worked the best. And you know what? And I think it was in those moments of disappointment and discouragement that Elizabeth really learned to trust in God. And I think she had come to the point of going, okay, God, if it's not my dream, then whatever your dream is for me, let that happen in my life. So today, as you look back over the Christmas story, who you listen to the most in your life? Or listen to what people say about you? Or listen to what God says about you? Because at the end of this passage, you know what it says? That God never fails. So this Christmas, wrapped up in the story of Jesus' birth, is an incredible gift for you and me. And that gift is the promise that God will never fail us. Merry Christmas. If you got any questions about what it means to start a journey with Jesus, go to our website at simplychurch.online. Fill out the connect card down at the bottom. Shoot me an email. I'd love to connect up with you and just talk a little bit how I can maybe pray for you, maybe answer some questions, and just join you in your journey with Jesus. Listen to me. We get to choose who we listen to. And when we listen to God, we will truly find out that he never fails.